Alright, you know, we hear a lot about buying less, owning less, living simply. But if we stop buying stuff, how does that actually work? How are we meant to survive? Whilst discussing this idea, I'm going to get to work on the veggie patch and get that thing finished. My neighbour's got this absolutely massive amount of wood chip on that hill over there. It's been sitting there for about a year, so it's managed to rot down a little bit, which is perfect for the pathways. He said I can have some, so I'm going to borrow a trailer off my neighbour and go over and grab some of it.
An arborist would have charged to take this wood chip away. When it's bagged up in the garden centre, you pay again, this time to bring it back. The same wood, just different transactions. It changes from waste to mulch, but it's the same bloody wood. Our neighbours went on a rampage last year, cutting loads of privet trees. They're invasive in New Zealand and can be a real problem. They'd just bought this land and were living here in a bell tent, so I lent them our old hot water heater. They said we could have as much wood chip as we wanted. So there's no money, no trade, just two people helping each other out. And this made me think, what's the real value here? Presumably it's not the wood itself. There's an invisible economy that sits underneath the one we measure. It doesn't show up in GDP and it's not marketed or advertised. Maybe that's why when we lived in London, I didn't even know it existed. Back then, my focus was my career. I'd go out and earn money, and if something broke, I'd pay to have it fixed. If the apartment needed cleaning, someone would come in to do it. Looking back, it was as if I'd outsourced a big part of my life, so I could keep my head free for the only thing that seemed to matter at that time, my career. Our lives now are radically different. I feel deeply connected to a community and less to a sense of career. If something breaks, you fix it. If you don't have the right tool, you borrow one. If you can't do it alone, you ask your neighbour. And when your neighbour asks a favour, you lend a hand. For me, this isn't just about buying less, it's about belonging more. It feels good to be useful, and when I need a favour, I don't feel guilty asking. The economy we talk about runs on scarcity. Buy it now, one of a kind, won't be in stock for long. But communities run on abundance. If I grow too many courgettes, I'll give them away. Too many oranges, I'll swap them for limes.
Someone gave me that chicken tractor you can see behind me. It's great, but the lay boxes that come with it are really small. The chickens are quite big, and they could probably fit, but they don't like being in here. So as a result, they're laying eggs elsewhere. So I thought I'll get rid of this and make them a new one, a bit more headroom.
One day I was sitting in the bus when this guy just showed up on the land and he said, "Hey, you want a chicken coop?" We didn't even have chickens, but I said yes anyway. Just felt like the right thing to do. He gave us it for free. To be honest, it isn't perfect. One of the wheels is missing and it's a little small for our hens, but it works okay. They're outside all day anyway. I like the idea of keeping things in circulation. If something still works, it shouldn't end up at the dump. Right now, the chickens won't even go inside the lay boxes. They're way too small. so I'm knocking up a few new ones from old scraps of ply. Nothing fancy, just enough to make it work. This is the kind of economy I like. The chickens have shelter, we get eggs, they eat the bugs around the fruit trees, turn our scraps into compost, and the whole system kind of feeds itself. This is what buying nothing really looks like. Total abundance. We'll have a few spare eggs, some extra fruit and vegetables, and we'll share them around with our neighbours, in return for the trailer, the coop, the wood chips. It's a kind of loop of reciprocity. There's an absence of spending, but it's been replaced by something else. Connection. I remember reading about this psychological experiment. A man in a waiting room asks a stranger if they'd like to buy a raffle ticket. Most people say no. In the next version of the experiment, he leaves the room, comes back with 2 cold drinks, one for himself and one for the stranger. Then he asks again if they'd like to buy a raffle ticket. The increase in sales is huge. What it shows is that we're hardwired for reciprocity. It's not something we learn, it's built in, it's part of who we are. And that's what I love about all this. This isn't some idealised rural fantasy I'm dreaming up here. It's the way we're actually designed to live. In connection, not transaction.
New Zealand is an insanely windy place in spring, and we live on the coast. So I don't want my veggie patch getting smashed by the wind all spring. And I also don't want the chickens to jump over a low fence and eat all the veggies. So what I'm doing is pretty full on, but I'm going to put a fence in about this sort of height, and I've got some enormous posts to drive in to hold that fence up. It's going to be really hard work because it's very, very solid clay. So I better get going.
You could look at this and think, this is a lot of effort for a veggie patch. But there is a reason for it. Ever since we moved to this town, we've been going to something called Crop Swap. A couple of times a month, we meet up and exchange what we've grown or made. It's not a like-for-like trade. If we have too many tomatoes, we give them away, and maybe we come home with marmalade. My last garden had a few problems, so I decided to start again. Being self-reliant is unbelievably difficult when it comes to food. But when you share with a community, it suddenly becomes a lot easier. Whatever I grow, I always end up with too much or not enough. But in a community, that problem disappears. Now I deliberately grow way too many of certain things, knowing that I can swap them later. Some people don't have gardens, so they bake or make preserves, skills that I don't have, and I'll be happy to trade with fruit and vegetables. No money changes hands, no tax for the government, no fuel, no refrigeration, no packaging. Everything is organic and everything is local. I'm not even sure what I love most, the food we get or the interaction with people who generally know far more about gardening than I do. Maybe that's what abundance really looks like. Not a full pantry, but a full circle. Financially, life can be tough, but it's times like these when a community can help. Between the wood chips, the chickens, the garden, we discovered that more was never the point. It reminds me of that quote from Fight Club about people buying things they don't need to impress people they don't know. I'm not sure what the opposite of that is, but I feel like we're slowly working our way towards it. Because in a world that says more is better, the real wealth is in the things we share.
That is all of the post done. The ground's pretty hard, just going into solid clay, so it took a bit of work. I've left a space at the far end and I'll put a gate up that end. This whole discussion about owning fewer items and spending less money came about from a video I made on the online idea of the Buy Nothing Rebellion. I'll link to the video here if you want to catch up and see that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.